Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here in person at Magic Johnson Recreation Center, and those of you who are joining online via WebEx and on YouTube. Just wanting to let you know that we are streaming and recording today's meeting. If you have any problems connecting, please go ahead and send a chat to the host in the WebEx. If you're here in person, you have questions, you can talk to the folks at the back table. Please remember to all the panelists and folks making public comment to speak directly into the microphone so that our virtual participants can hear clearly. It is now 10:05 and our Vice Chair Diane Terry is going to chair the meeting today, and I will turn it over to you to start.
Good morning. It is 10:05, Monday, June 9th, 2025, and I am calling to order this special meeting of the Los Angeles Probation Oversight Commission. I am Diane Terry, Vice Chair of the Commission. Chair Eduardo Mundo is at a funeral, and he's so sorry that he's not able to join us today. So welcome to all of you. We look forward to hearing from you on several important topics, including the Probation Department's depopulation plan, BSCC's suitability, and the impact that staffing has had on the operations of the department, including field services or field operations. So there is a lot to discuss today, and we can go ahead and get started. And I will turn it over to Wendy Julian, our Executive Director, to explain how you can participate during today's meeting, and then she will call the roll.
Thank you. As Diane said, I'm Wendy, Executive Director of the Probation Oversight Commission. I just want to start this morning by thanking the commissioners for being here, those of you who've joined online and those who are here in person, understanding that today and this weekend have been difficult days for this city that I love very much and our county, and that we decided to go forward with the meeting because of the importance of the topics and actually the relationships of the topics of what we're talking about in justice reform and probation oversight to the overall questions of democracy and civil rights and the rights of citizens in our county. So for all of you out there who are impacted by the activities that have occurred over the weekend related to ICE strategies and protests, we ask that you please be safe and stay safe and continue to boldly exercise your civil rights. With that, I will get started, unless you wanted to say anything further. Okay, so as always, we encourage real public participation in our meetings, and we welcome your comments in writing or live today. Because this is a special meeting, we're only talking about the business that's contained in the agenda. That's all we can consider or discuss today. We will take public comment today, just like we always do on every agenda item, but there's not a general public comment section at the end because it's a special meeting. If you do want to give public comment on topics that are not on today's agenda, or if you don't want to give the public comment live, you can do so by emailing us at info@poc.lacounty or by attending our next regular POC meeting, which will be on June 23rd. As usual, the way we're going to do this today is Vice Chair Terry will introduce the items, we'll hear the presentation, and the commission will discuss the items. Then we'll take public comment before the commission takes any action. This meeting is scheduled for 2 hours. We will ensure that there's at least 30 minutes for public comment. However, we may need to limit public comment to 1 minute if a lot of people are signed up for individual items. Vice Chair Terry will decide that after each item, depending on how many people are signed up. Please help me by stopping your comments immediately when your time ends. We have a little timer in the room now to help with that. Please make sure your comment relates to the subject matter and remain respectful of each other and the forum. It's really easy to participate. If you're here in person, you just need to come up to the podium and introduce yourself. If you joined via WebEx, use the little raise your hand function. It's like a little icon that looks like a hand at the bottom of the screen. If you're calling in on WebEx, you need to dial *3 on your phone, and that activates the raise hand feature. Once we call on you, you need to unmute yourself, whether you're on WebEx or calling in. To unmute yourself on the phone, you dial *6. And again, feel free to submit your comments in writing. We'll attach them to the agenda. As I said, we're broadcasting live on YouTube, and there's no engagement with users on YouTube. We do encourage you to subscribe, though, to our YouTube channel, also following our social media at LA County POC for more information. Buenos días y bienvenidos. Ya hemos iniciado la conferencia por Webex y en persona. Si le gustaría hacer un comentario público después de que empecemos la reunión, por favor, haga clic en la imagen de la mano y abriremos un micrófono. Si está escuchando la conferencia por teléfono y quiere hacer pregunta, presione estrella 3 y le avisaremos cuando sea su turno. Si está viendo la conferencia en vivo por YouTube, no puede participar. Tiene que conectarse vía Webex y hay instrucciones de cómo hacer eso en nuestro sitio de web. Si prefiere hacer sus comentarios en español, les daremos el doble del tiempo y podemos proveer traducción al inglés o usted puede proveer su propio traductor. Nomás avísenos. I am going to call the roll. Commissioners, please respond when I call your name. Commissioner Dolores Canales?
I don't know. I have. Yes.
Can you turn on? Oh, we were just calling roll.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But I can see that we're getting started. Commissioner Harris. Commissioner Shea Jackson. Commissioner Millie Kakani.
Present.
Commissioner Meredith is absent. Commissioner Sam Prater. Commissioner Tyreek Ship. Commissioner and today's chair, Diane Terry. And Commissioner Mundo is absent. Commissioner Terry, it just occurred to me there was one other thing I was going to say, and I can't remember what it was. Administratively. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Much of the agenda, as usual, has supporting documents attached to it. This meeting was called as a special meeting with less preparation time than we usually have. And my request to the probation department went to them on June 3rd, which, as you can imagine, was very tight time frame. Those information requests, everything that was requested for the item on BSCC compliance and the depopulation plan were received on Saturday. And I say that as a thank you and a compliment for them being received so quickly. Those have been uploaded. The written answers to the questions have been uploaded to the agenda so the public can see those. There are also a couple of other sets of documents that were received that have not yet been uploaded because of the late time frame, and we will upload those to the agenda. And also, if you want copies of those, you can always email me. My email is on our website, or you can send it to the info at LA County, at poc.lacounty.gov, and I will send you those documents. So my apologies for not having everything uploaded, but I think you'll find that all of the crucial elements have been uploaded for your conversations today. And my gratitude to the probation department for providing those the information in a thorough way that can help the discussion today. Thank you.
Commissioner Canales, you said you had a question, so I didn't know. Is it for this agenda item?
Since it's not in the minute until close.
Okay. So on to agenda item 2, which is the approval of the minutes. And that is one of those documents that Wendy was just referring to. We were going to table that item. The minutes are not included as one of the attachments. So we were going to table this item to be approved at our meeting later this month in June. So that takes us to agenda item 3, which is to discuss and take possible action on the implementation of the LA County Probation Department's depopulation plan and the department's response to the POC's recommended solutions that do not conflict with the plan. On May 16th, Supervising Judge Miguel Espinoza approved the LA County Probation Department's depopulation plan for Los Padrinos Juvenile Hall. Judge Espinoza added some additional orders and timelines for the population. One of the additional orders was that some youth could remain at Los Padrinos, but that it had to be found suitable by the BSCC. Since the chief was unable to join us today due to a conflict, we did ask for written responses for this agenda item, and those responses were received. So joining us today, we have 3 representatives from the probation department, and I'll actually have you introduce yourselves and then share a little bit about the updates you all will provide.
Good morning, Jocelyn Roman. I'm acting juvenile deputy director. Is it on? It looks on.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
That's
Oh, wow, okay. Jocelyn Roman, Acting Juvenile Deputy Director, and I'll pass the mic down so we can introduce.
Cesar Mayorkin, Director over IDC and CDP.
Angela Walker, Senior Director for Juvenile Special Services.
All right, thank you and welcome. So just so everyone is clear, we asked the department to give updates on a series of items: progress on preparation of facilities and plans for movement of youth, progress on compliance with BSCC, progress on implementation of Judge Espinoza's directives to the department in the order to show cause hearing, updates on the notification process to families and communication with community-based organizations and county programs and service providers who are impacted by these relocations, and then a response to the POC depopulation solutions regarding the process by which youth are assessed at intake for eligibility for release, opportunities for improvement in detention reports, recommendations, and improvements to the intake process that would reduce the length of stay for youth who do not pose a risk to public safety. We will also have someone speaking after probation from DYD, who is Ale Hazert from the reentry program at DYD, who will share some information and takeaways regarding the DYD community dialogue events that have been happening. 4 have been held so far, and the 5th one will be held this Thursday. So I'm not sure if he is here. Oh, okay. Okay. So after we're done with this item, then we'll have you come forward. And linked to the agenda are several supporting documents, including the POC's recommended depopulation solutions, the probation department's depopulation plan, and the presentation that probation submitted to the board for the June 3rd board meeting. So before we get started, Wendy is going to give some quick background about the global plan and the depopulation plan, just to frame the conversation.
Thank you, Chair Terry. So the chief gave a pretty thorough presentation to the Board of Supervisors last Tuesday. And at the end of the presentation, there were a number of public comments, and then Supervisor Mitchell made a statement about clarifying some of the differences between the global plan and the depopulation plan. And so I thought I would just echo and expand on that a little bit, just to help the conversation, to make sure that everybody in the public who's listening understands why these items are sometimes referred to in an overlapping way. So the global plan was a direct response to a board motion that happened many months ago. And that global plan came out, and there was a lot of robust conversation here at the Probation Oversight Commission, at the board, among the public. And then in an overlapping way, the Judge Espinoza, required the department to develop a depopulation plan. And the department developed that and then shared it publicly. That's attached to the agenda. I think the reason that there is some confusion is that there are some elements of the depopulation plan that are also in the global plan. But the depopulation plan is the plan that was approved by the judge with some additions, I think I would say, no subtractions, some additions. But the conversation now in terms of going forward is about the depopulation plan. Likewise, DYD had agreed prior to the depopulation plan to hold these community listening sessions to talk about the global plan, and that shifted to a conversation about the depopulation plan. So I have had the opportunity to attend 2 of the sessions. Sarah attended one of the sessions, and Diane attended one of the sessions to observe and listen. And that conversation has been about a description of how the depopulation plan will work. So if you hear the 2 plans being referred to today, please know that the focus of this meeting and going forward is on the depopulation plan. And I will welcome Jocelyn or anyone else who wants to give further explanation to that, but I think it makes a lot of sense that people are discussing them both together.
All right, we will turn it over to you all.
Good morning. Let me move this way a little. I'm going to start off, I'm going to follow your agenda so I can go in direct order. The first one was the progress on the preparation of the facilities and plans for movement of youth. So the first thing that we know is we've already depopulated Camp Page. Camp Page has already started construction. It started last week. The timeline for the construction is approximately 8 weeks. It was replacement of a beam, some roof work to be done, some electrical work to be done to the panel on the control center. So the estimate is 8 weeks for that. So currently there are no youth over at Camp Page. The other facilities that will require some work have not started anything. So one of them would be Campus Kilpatrick. We submitted, well, let me not say that, I said anything. Let me backtrack. We have submitted our plan for what is going to take over to the BSEC. The BSEC provided us a response on Friday with some more questions clarifying, but none of them have to do with any construction. But it was more clarifying on what our operation would look like and how it would function. The things that have come up, and I think you guys have brought them up as well, we're working with our partner agencies, DPW and everybody else to make sure that we're making all of the repairs or any adjustments that need to be made. The chief spoke to it at the board the other day where he mentioned a lot of the things we were aware of, however, they weren't high on the priority list for the county. Now we've had to reprioritize and we're doing that. We have several calls every single week to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. And by several calls, I mean at least 3 or 4 where we are all on the line and we're talking about what it takes, where we are, what's going on. So that's for Kilpatrick. There were no repairs needed or any changes to DKC and no changes needed for Berry J. Now, anything that was home-like or any of those things, those are continuing. That better? Okay. Want me to shout? That should help? Yes, no? Better? Okay. I'm gonna have to use a dorm voice. Um, So there are no other repairs that are needed at any of the other facilities. Any questions about item 1 before I move on?
I'm a little confused. The plan you submitted to the BSEC, their concern is about operations, but do you intend to do construction at DKC? Any repairs? And if so, what are they specifically?
At DKC?
Sorry,
CBK?
CVK.
I do that too.
Kilpatrick.
Some of the things that have to be done are going to be windows for Title 24. Now, there might be a possibility that the windows can wait a little bit longer, whether or not they have, it's going to be up to the BSCC to say at what point we have to make those window adjustments. We know that there's, I think, an order delay on the windows that has nothing to do with probation, but I think just on the manufacturing of them. So that's one. I think one of the issues that came up in one of the reports was whether or not there was a sewage concern. These are all things that we're working with our partners. So I can't tell you that we're going to start irrigation when that's not something that I'm aware of, but we are in constant conversation about it. The final answer is going to come from BSCC on whether or not something's going to prevent us from being able to open a facility. Number 2 would be, oh,
I think there's
go
a,
ahead.
I'm
Go
just curious, generally speaking, if there are a lot of deadlines that are, or like timelines that go out 8 weeks and we have deadlines as soon as June 16th, it's not really making sense to me how you guys are going to have these things implemented in a timely manner for some of the deadlines according to the plan.
So the Camp Page construction was already calculated within our proposal to the court. So that one really doesn't impact any of our movement or the deadlines that exist. So Camp Page was meant to be under construction during this period. We were all aware that that was going to happen. The final move happens, and if go over the plan again. But the very final move that happens is we would move developmentally disabled youth over to Dorothy Kirby Center. And Dorothy Kirby Center would actually be housing temporarily youth that are pending going to camp and pending going to placement. Those youth are the ones that we want to have at Camp Page. So they wouldn't be at LP. It's part of the depopulation plan, but they would be at Dorothy Kirby Center temporarily until Page is actually ready.
Okay, and how soon would you guys be expecting to get the girls over to Kilpatrick?
It's all dependent on the timeline for the things that we've already prepared and submitted to the courts. So one of the things that we had to prepare, and I think it's, I think it's item number 3, was the info to courts for the youth to be able to leave Campus Kilpatrick. So I can cover that when I get to item number 3.
Okay, I'll please proceed now.
No worries. I'm trying to keep it in order.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. How many youth do you plan on moving to Dorothy Kirby?
Dorothy Kirby Center would receive the youth that are pending placement and pending camp. So that number might fluctuate. I can't give you an actual solid number, but we're thinking it would probably be somewhere around 20.
20. Okay, so I'm just trying to do some math here because my read from the tentative order was that LP should be down from 278 to 197 by June 16th, which is pretty soon. So you have 20 youth who are going to be at Dorothy Kirby in the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks by June 16th.
So what we presented to the court were timelines that we were wanting to meet. However, Judge Espinoza gave us timelines that we have to meet before we can make any movements. So a lot of the things that he gave us have a 30-day, 45-day window. So the proposal that we gave of June 16th may probably not come into effect because we're meeting the other timelines that Judge Espinoza gave us.
Okay. Are you going to talk about those timelines? And we're like, because I know just as I'm
Yes,
looking
I am.
at that tentative order, sorry. Yeah, I guess I don't want to jump the gun. So are you going to talk about the
Yes.
timelines? Is that item 3? Okay.
Yes.
And then can you just, it always just feels like we're speaking super vaguely. Can you give some specifics around what it is that you are seeking to do at Kilpatrick, say? Like, I know, like, we talk about sewage super vaguely. I have no idea what that means. I have no idea what the specifics are around that, who you've spoken to, the timeline that you've been given, or, and I know we keep saying like, oh, we're going to wait for the BSCC to approve or not approve or tell us what needs to be done. But I'm just trying to, like, if you're talking 3 or 4 times a week, it seems like that might be part of the conversation, just like the specifics of what needs to be done, at least from the probation department's perspective.
So it's hard to give you specifics when I'm not ISD and I'm not DPW. That's not my forte. So I don't want to give you specifics on something that I'm not an expert in. However, I can tell you that those conversations are involving the need to contact Coastal Commission before we can start work. But what that looks like is on their side. I don't know what, from probation, what exactly we do when it comes to the Coastal Commission. The work that you're asking about is things that some of them you brought to us, which we were aware of, but you brought them up knowing that it was an issue, such as sewage, right? The same as you. That's not my forte. We know that it's a concern and we know that we're working with our partners to address it, but there are timelines and there are things that they have to work with before any work can get started. And one of them is such as the Coastal Commission. But I think if you want more specifics for things like that, maybe ISD or DPW actually needs to answer those questions because I don't want to give misinformation.
So aside from windows, sewage, contacting the Coastal Commission, are there any other things that at least are on your radar that need to be done at Kilpatrick?
Nothing that I can tell you that prevents Kilpatrick from being operable.
So you can move, so your intention is to move the girls before like the sewage issue is addressed?
So you're trying to pin me down to say that I know we're working with our partner agencies and we're working with the Coastal Commission and we're all meeting regularly. BSCC is working with us. So it's all moving parts. I can't tell you that I'm going to move the girls in until they tell me whether or not the Coastal Commission can approve something. They can't tell you that the sewage problem is so extreme because I don't work for ISD or DPW. We are all meeting regularly to determine whether or not there's a barrier. Doesn't seem that there's one at this time. Anything that is BSCC related, we are waiting for BSCC to give us approval.
Okay. And what's the timeline for that, for hearing back from the BSCC?
We're hoping that BSCC will do another walkthrough this week.
Okay.
Commissioner Canales?
Hi, thank you for that information. So it sounds like you are working with different entities and trying to make this all happen. And I'm wondering if leadership has went inside Kilpatrick to work with like the probation staff along with the incarcerated community to have the answers for the concerns, the fears, the questions, everything that is coming up. If you've had some like leadership circles, guidance, talking points, messaging, to because the youth have a lot of questions as well too. So I'm just wondering if leadership has actually went inside these facilities to hold these same working with collaborative discussions.
Thank you for that. I personally have gone up and walked Kilpatrick and talked to youth. Some of the recommendations that we made on how we would house youth at Barry J actually came from the youth and the conversations that I had with them. Additionally, I asked the facility to talk to the youth a little bit further and get some more input from them. So the director of the facility did that along with their BMP coordinator to get some feedback. In terms of transition, we've asked DYD Mental Health to get together with the probation staff to actually have those town halls with the kids, not just there, but also at Barry J and at LP to ease some of the anxieties and to answer some questions that has not quite started yet because we haven't gotten to where we're actually moving around. But because Kilpatrick is the first one so significantly impacted, that has occurred. In terms of the staff, we haven't had a town hall or anything like that at Kilpatrick. But again, I personally have talked to staff, heard some of their concerns, heard some of their anxieties, and had that one-on-one conversation, maybe sometimes 2 or 3 on one, to kind of discuss what it is that they're facing and what it is that they're concerned about. So we are familiar. We do have more intentions of having more of those conversations on a larger scale. They also have a director on site who has provided some feedback of what she's heard from her staff. Thank you.
So I was going to say maybe we could allow for the full presentation. That way we can see if any of our questions get answered. And then once we go to commissioners, we can start with you, Commissioner Shipp. Is that okay? Okay.
Thank you. Jesus. The second one was the progress with BSCC. I think I spoke to that a little bit in terms of we submitted our report over to BSCC on our intentions for Barry J and our intentions for Dorothy Kirby. Those were both 2 separate reports that were submitted. We received some questions back on Barry J. Our answer was prepared. I don't know if it's gone into BSCC just yet, but we have a prepared answer to submit probably today if it hasn't gone in already. And BSCC just came back to us with some questions for Kilpatrick on Friday. So we're preparing our draft responses for those right now. So again, we're in constant communication, trying to make sure that they're aware of the plan, we're aware of whatever questions that they have, and we're taking the time to answer them thoroughly. If there was anything else on that with BSCC.
Just keep going.
Okay. The next one was the progress on the implementation of Judge Espinoza's directives to the department. This is where some of the timelines come up. So the first one was to assess all 16 youth that were at Kilpatrick for step down into the community. So that assessment was done by our caseworkers, the director, along with the public defenders for each one of our youth. It appears that each one of those youth will be recommended for step down into the community. Actually has already been recommended. Those went in last week. So Judge Espinoza had given us a 2-week time frame to submit those. And the assessment actually looked at the length of stay that they had in SYTF, how they've responded to DSS, how they have showed their progress. I asked questions about where they're in high school, where they're in college. The readiness for release was really taken into consideration. And because we had stopped intake to Kilpatrick, we didn't have any kids who had just gotten there and would have to go back to Barry J. So everybody was pretty far into their program. So it was actually a really good opportunity. So they would have already been going in that direction. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 that we're changing a little bit of a timeline on, hopefully to not have to have them go to Barry J. So they're presented to the court. It's up to the court whether or not those youth are going to step down into the community. But in a collaborative effort, every single one of them has been recommended. The second part was within 30 days, the probation department was ordered to meet with Brian Capra for the developmentally disabled youth. I had that meeting with Mr. Capra on the 28th of May. It was a very productive meeting. We discussed the youth that would be going over to Dorothy Kirby Center, any youth that would be remaining at LP, any youth that would be going into Kilpatrick, making sure that we have continuity of care, making sure that we're providing services equally, regardless of what institution they are at. There was questions about Passports for Learning, which is a program that's ordered by Regional Center, making sure that youth have access. So knowing that that has about a 2-month timeline because of the work that has to happen at Page before those youth can move, we have a really good opportunity to make sure that we're moving forward appropriately. And I think collectively, everyone on the call was looking forward to seeing the work that can be done for that population over at Dorothy Kirby Center. Within 45 days, the probation department was ordered to work on transportation and visitation for CVK. That is a work in progress. Again, we have 45 days to come up with what that plan looks like. We're working with DYD. We'll talk a little bit about community meetings in a while, but it has come up in the community meetings, so we've received some of the feedback from them. We're looking to see if there's options to expand some of the contracts that we currently have, or whether or not there's an ability to actually place it into a contract that we currently have to assist with transportation. So that's something that is still in progress, not ignored, being talked about, and we're looking for a resolution. The fourth one was identifying youth who qualified for fire camp. The 45 days was the time frame that we were provided for that. And we had 36 youth assessed. I had someone come down from Barry J. Nidoff, go and actually interview all of the youth that qualified at LP, talk to them about the program, find out how interested they were. We looked at some of the things that disqualify youth from being able to go, and it was discussed a little bit at the board. Some of the things that we know are things like asthma, medication. Those aren't things that we control. Those are just part of the program that would be things that exclude youth from being able to qualify. So out of the 36 assessed, at this time, 14 qualify. Now, that doesn't mean that more wouldn't qualify. One of the things that they look at is behavior as well. So something like a change in behavior could actually help a kid get into a program. So on a precursory level, it looks like 14 out of the 36. Within 45 days, we were ordered to review camp youth for early release. From Camp Page, that was the first one that we did. Camp Page had 16 youth. Out of those 16, 5 qualified for early release and were released prior to the transition to Rocky and Aflaball. The remaining youth went over to Rocky and Aflaball. Some of the things that you look at is, if you're familiar with how youth are ordered camp, sometimes they get a 4 to 6, a 7 to 9 month camp program. So they have the ability to early release based on their behavior, based on participation in programming, graduation from high school. There's different qualifiers that help them move forward with early releases. So we continue to take a look at those. We're still looking at the ones for Rocky and Aflaball, but that's a regular process. It's not something that just came up because of the order. So we do regularly release youth early based on their behavior as part of the behavior management program. Number 6 was an update on the step down. So it was reported that we have a 5-month delay for Boys Republic, specifically in the court order. So we were asked to assess our step down. So since then, we actually had a contract with Amity that was in progress. That contract has been signed. They have, I think, 10 beds, and Amity will be able to take youth beginning in July. We've consulted with Boys Republic to see if they have any interest in expanding their step down. They're going to discuss that with their board. So we're already looking forward to opportunities with new contracts for step down. And as I mentioned, the one for Amity was already in progress. The last thing was number 7, timely progress reports for youth in the community. So this is something that we have already been working very diligently on, trying to make sure that we're getting these reports in on time to the courts wherever possible. If not, we're doing continuances. And so we're aware that that is something that we have had to address. Part of the redistribution of officers, we intend to utilize probation assistants, also utilizing our probation officers as they get redistributed. And there's a little bit of a conversation that'll happen with that with the union. So I can't really go into it because we're just starting them, but the redistribution will allow us to have more focused officers in the offices to work on that reports on time. And like I said, it's something that we've already focused on. Oh, it's okay. And that covers the items for the updates for the order to show cause. The next one was the notification process for families and communication with community-based organization and county program service providers impacted by the relocation. For that item, we've been discussing it at the community events, which we've been lucky enough to have good advocacy at, so they're able to tell us a little bit more about their needs. We have already had one event over at Barry J. Nightoff to discuss the transitions that are coming up with the communities, stakeholders. Our websites are updated. We're continuing to update them. I think right now there's not some very specific information because we don't have dates to provide, but that's part of our communication strategy. We're also intending to utilize our social media to communicate out. We've had parents and directors and supervisors available to answer questions. Directors and supervisors available to answer parent questions at visiting. We've also had a dedicated email address created for people who can't maybe come interact in person but have a question that's being checked regularly by family. I think we call them ambassadors. They're also going to be part of the conversations that happen with the youth. So we're making sure that we have people that are dedicated to answering questions regularly. I think that's a concern, is we don't want questions to land somewhere and nobody actually has a response. So I think we're taking a very proactive approach. We're always open to more suggestions, which is what we're getting from this community engagement on how we can get some best practices with getting information out there. Takeaways from the DYD dialogue. I think this is probably a personal takeaway. I've been to 3 out of the 4. I think that they've been very, very, very informative. I think it gets better each one, right? We started out with a smaller group. I think we got a much larger group at the last event that we went to. We're not only having an opportunity to present the plan and what it is that we're doing, but we're also having an opportunity to hear back what some of the concerns are. I mentioned transportation coming up as a concern, and it's something that you might imagine is a concern, but when you actually get to hear how it's a concern, it really helps you plan around it and how you can do your best to make sure that you're meeting their needs. And that's only one example, but on a personal note, I think I'm the only one from the probation that has been to one of those events so far from this panel. But they've been very enlightening, and so I'm sure that you guys will have some thoughts or questions about that. And the last one, I think maybe we'll wait to pass that one down to them. I think I went through most of them. These are going to be the questions that Ms. Walker, Mr. Marroquino respond to.
Okay, so then I think we can now turn it back over and commissionership.
Yes. So first, I have a question around room confinement, right? Like you got a bunch of youth moving to Barry J. We know Barry J has been in and out of compliance a lot, especially around staffing, right? And we're talking about moving youth who are in a least restrictive placement to the most restrictive placement, right? What are you guys doing around room confinement and staffing at Barry J. Nightoff? That will be different from what we've seen in the past, especially around the BSCC, because they keep finding us out of compliance with room confinement.
So 2 things. Part about the least restrictive to restrictive, that's the Kilpatrick youth, right? So we're hoping that the Kilpatrick youth don't have to transfer. With that being said, just to circle back to it, we did allow those youth to pick their unit and the ability to try to give them some freedom and ask what they would want. One of the reasons why they wanted unit AB was because they had easier access to get to basketball courts, easier access to get down to the gym. They have grassy area outside. So we are taking that into consideration from least restrictive to a more restrictive environment. In terms of room confinement, knowing that staffing did contribute to that on our reports at least, we are already doing a staffing assessment, which has been completed for all of our locations. And Barry J would actually receive additional staffing based on that assessment to make sure that that's not an issue.
And I also have another question around Kilpatrick, right? For us, when we did our inspection, we heard that Kilpatrick may or may not be getting more staff, and we are talking about building a bigger population there. What are you doing around staffing? Is there some type of program where staff can get some type of incentive to move to Kilpatrick, or what is, because that is one of the first things that's going to happen. We're talking June 16th, maybe a little after, but what are we doing to get more staff out there for these young people? Because even if we do have, we do move those young people out there, if we don't have adequate staffing, we'll have room confinement issues there as well. So what is the staffing plan for people in Kilpatrick, especially because people don't live in those surrounding neighborhoods?
So again, staffing has been assessed for every single location. It is estimated that Kilpatrick will be receiving staff. I'm not sure where you got that from. I think sometimes the anxieties of people are thinking that they're gonna have to work with the current staffing that they have. We also have to think about the gender of all of our staff that are actually at Kilpatrick. So we've taken a look at all of that, and there are adjustments that will be made to the staff over at Kilpatrick.
Commissioner Prater?
I
Or,
was going to just ask if that includes the kitchen staffing as well, right? Is that in that increased staff capacity?
Yes, we're working with our MSB team to increase that.
Okay, and I know there was a comment about the use of, mentioning the word kitchen, about the facilities. Has that been addressed? I was at Kilpatrick a couple months ago on a visit, and so there was a huge commercial kitchen that was different than the one they were serving food out of that they weren't using. Have you guys addressed sort of like those issues around the use of that commercial kitchen?
So the commercial kitchen is for the culinary arts program that was developed for Campus Kilpatrick. So we're hopeful that that would actually be something that we expand upon for the population that's coming in. Yes.
I did want to add to that, though. I think there were other issues around the kitchen that came up in the most recent inspection that it wasn't, the kitchen was not adequately equipped to actually serve more youth who would be coming in. And so just wanted to point that out. I think it's more what we learned in that recent inspection.
So we're working with the staff from MSB, the staff from the probation side to come up with whether or not we would have to actually be rotating the youth because we may want to keep those populations eating during different periods, rotating them in, which could alleviate some of the issues that the kitchen might face with having to feed so many kids at one time.
I know that some of you may have heard now a couple of times today, and also it was also mentioned at the board meeting about a list of concerns from Kilpatrick. Those will be uploaded to the agenda hopefully later today. Also, if you really want to see them right now, send me an email and I will send them to you. So it's just a technology thing that we haven't uploaded them to the agenda yet, but they will be made public.
Commissioner Harris?
Can you just break it down for me? I don't know that I've heard it, and I'm just curious. The current population of CVK, as I understand it, has not exceeded 20 youth or young people. And the proposal is to increase that by over double to almost 50. So when you're having internal conversations, I'm just talking about probation staff right now. When you're having internal conversations and submitting proposals to the BSCC, how many staff, what does it take to go from having a population of between 16 and 20 youth to roughly 50 youth? What does that staffing look like for the department? How many more probation staff do you need to be going into that facility on a daily basis?
So you're asking for the staffing plan, which hasn't been approved yet, so I'm not going to quite get into all of the details. But you are looking to, first let me say, the facility was built to house over 100 youth, right? That's how it was built, that's how it was designed, that's how it was approved to be open. So just because we kept it at 20 doesn't mean that that's all it was capable of handling. So that's first. Second, the way that you staff depends on how many youth you have per building, right? So you look at your ratios that you have to comply with, 8-to-1, one staff for every 8 youth. We would never have just one, so you would have at least 2. So all of those things have to be taken into consideration. Do you have the staff to take the kids to school? Do you have staff to be able to take the kids over to the medical unit? All of those things factor into your staffing numbers. How many cottages you have open? If I put more kids in less cottages, I may require less staff, but we're planning on utilizing all 5 cottages. So all of those things are taken into consideration and have been looked at for the staffing plan, but I can't quite give you a number because we haven't submitted that to the BSCC yet, and we haven't submitted that over to, to anybody. That we have it though.
Are you confident you have the staff to adequately and appropriately staff CVK at that level?
We're confident that we have looked at the staffing and we're making the assessment and the moves that are going to be needed. Again, we're working with the unions.
think Commissioner Jackson and then Commissioner Canales.
Yeah, so I perceive a lot of vulnerabilities in the plan. It's a plan that the POC really doesn't endorse in the first place, but we work with what we're given and just offering feedback based on what you guys or what the judge approved. There are not enough absolutes and like there are too many uncertainties around a lot of this stuff, timelines, deadlines, things like that. And, we don't have the staff buy-in that we need. We don't have the levels that we need. It sounds like you guys are assessing that on an ongoing basis. That's good. You guys anticipate service delivery delays with like the ISD. There are so many things that you guys just don't have control over. And so I'm wondering if you are engaging in any degree of contingency or scenario planning, because we really need this plan to work. And historically, the department has just not proven that it can effectively plan. And we need some assurance around the department thinking about these things, not only in a critical manner, but in from multiple perspectives to make sure that we are prepared to address anything that we haven't really planned for. But the point is that we should be planning for multiple scenarios. Have you guys engaged in that? And if you haven't, what could that look like?
So we know that we're taking a phased approach, working with the court, and the fact that we've been given 30-day timelines, 45-day timelines, that's been very helpful in making sure that we don't just have to do some massive moves, which is some of the things that we've been criticized for are the moves that we've had to make very quickly. With the contingency planning, we know that there's not a need or a mandatory need to move any of the kids that are at Dorothy Kirby Center in terms of, not the girls, but in terms of the boys that are currently at Dorothy Kirby Center. When we move the girls out, we do have space at Dorothy Kirby. That's not a question. That's not an issue. They do have the space over there to be able to move the kids from LP. So that's not going to be an issue. The only real issue that lies is going to be with Campus Kilpatrick and whether or not we have any barriers that we cannot overcome. We don't foresee that. It really appears that that's going to be a move that we're able to make. There's not any issue that's not repairable or that's so large over at Kilpatrick that we're not able to take on. In the camps, we've been able to make the moves. Paige is going to be ready and available within 8 weeks. And if the worst case scenario is that it takes a little bit longer than 8 weeks, none of the repairs are so large that we're not going to be able to foresee that that's going to be an operable camp. So I don't know that we're in a situation as we were before where we didn't really have the options of facilities that are running and facilities that work. These are all open facilities that are available and have youth right now, and we're able to move the kids around. This is not a closed facility that we're going to have to reopen. So I think we're a little bit more confident. And because the court is supporting and giving us some timelines and is actually giving us a space to be able to step down kids into the community and not have to move them so quickly over to Barry J from Kilpatrick, we're able to, I think, be a little bit more sensitive about some of the moves that we're making and not having to rush the moves. So I don't know that contingency planning is quite what I'm saying, but I think because we're not moving as fast, we're able to actually take a more sensitive approach to how we're doing it.
Okay.
I think that's the best way I can answer it.
Yeah, I think that's a decent answer. I do have a follow-up question, which is I personally would like some insight into what those planning meetings look like without you divulging any sensitive information. I'm very invested in how you guys come to the table and sort of put all of the variables there and decide how things are going to be like prioritized and stuff. Are you guys documenting things? Are you evaluating the plan? Like, I really would like some insight into what that process looks like before we come to the table.
So we're having several different meetings. Some meetings are very site-specific, so we'll have the manager from that location, and everybody from the partner agencies is talking just about that location. So we don't get caught up on talking about something from LP when we really need to talk about Page. So we're having several of those conversations. They include LACO, they include MSB, they include ISD, they include everybody is at that conversation, and we're asking about what are the number of youth that are coming through, because we want to make sure that we're properly assessing them for their classes, and we're making sure that we have the classrooms, and having deep down conversation to that point about each kid, making sure we're getting them into the right space versus just, oh, well, we're here. let's find a place to put them. We're actually having really, really detailed conversations. Even if it's 8 weeks out, we're talking about what that could look like and looking at the trends and the numbers to make sure that we're properly prepared. In terms of the larger scale, that's happening where we're kind of having a more overall, just in general, where we're saying what's next for us. And ELTs having those conversations separately, making sure that we're scheduling our meetings with the unions, making sure that we're still moving in those directions. So it's a lot of different conversations. It's hard to tell you the details of all of them, but site-specific, larger, and then the executive team.
Sure. Can the POC look forward to any communication about any substantive developments in those plans so that we don't find out about things after the fact and more so get some advance notice to know what to anticipate with some of the moves?
I'm sure we can.
Thank you.
Commissioner Canales?
Hi, thank you. I think my question is a little bit leaning towards what Shay was asking. So, in the past, we've seen like the redirection notices where staff was just notified like at a moment's notice. And I met staff that had been at Camp Kilpatrick for over a decade, and then they were redirected with an email to report to Los Padrinos. As you begin to shift everybody around and to make this all work, this plan, will you be working directly with the staff and those that were already there? Will they have the opportunity to go back, or will you just be kind of doing it the way that it happened in the past with an email? This is where you're assigned and what you're supposed to do, and these are your days off, no questions asked. Because this is what caused some of the mental and physical torment to staff and youth, was the procedure that was used in the past. So this time, will there be a more linear, considerate procedure with communication and advance notice and even buy-in? Even, this is what we're doing at Page, who's interested in going there. This is what we're doing at Camp Kilpatrick. Will the procedure be different this time?
I would love for the procedure to be improved. So I would say I would love for the procedure to be improved. I've been a line staff myself, and so I know how impactful that can be. What I can tell you is that it's going to all come down to our communications with our unions and how we can work together to best meet the needs of our staff. And I'm going to say it again. We can work together to best meet the needs of our staff, because sometimes we just move so quickly and we're not thinking of the large scale number that is being impacted. So it is going to take some work with the union. It would be ideal if we could allow staff to determine where they would like to go. There are things that we are going to have to take into consideration, such as their seniority and other things that exist. So maybe somebody doesn't quite get to go where they want to go because of seniority, but it would be great if we could get their input. So from me to you, that is our intention, and I hope that that's how it works out. And I look forward to the union working with us.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kakani?
I sometimes forget to name the primary issue here, and that is that LP is still operating unlawfully, and we have, I don't know, almost 300 young people there. And I'm just reading the judge's tentative ruling from the last court date, where it states, conversely, if probation's efforts to effectuate the county's depopulation plan fail to meet its own benchmarks for the population at LP, as identified in probation's plan at table 2 on page 7, without sufficient cause to excuse the delay, the court will adopt its tentative ruling on the order to show cause. The tentative ruling being to empty out LP and stop using it. And so I'm looking at this table in the depopulation strategy, which states that by June 16th, which is next Monday, the population at LP will be 197 young people, with 51 young people being at Kilpatrick. And I know that the chief has come here and said that the issue as it pertained to Kilpatrick's population was about the surrounding community and less so about the facility. I went to the CVK inspection last year where, in talking to staff and looking at the residential quarters, the argument was that the population was also somewhat limited because of how many staff could reside there, because of the 56-hour work week. Again, like the sewage issue. I think I can't remember if some of the units were being used for other things, whatever it was. I'm confused as to how, everything that you've shared just feels so vague. And so I don't understand how you're going to move 51 girls to Kilpatrick by next Monday. Or are you saying that that's unlikely?
Well, I think what you also said was that if there was a delay that did not have cause, we're meeting the judge's timelines that he gave us, 30, 45 days to take actions. So until the judge approves us stepping down those youth from Kilpatrick, Kilpatrick cannot house girls. We currently have 12 youth that remain at Campus Kilpatrick that we have submitted step down information to courts. If the judge determines that they're going to be stepped down, then that's what we'll do. If not, they're going to be transitioning over to Barry J. So we can't move girls until we actually get action from the court on what has been proposed. So it's not without cause. It's actually based on the timelines that we've been provided.
Okay, so it's your belief that there's sufficient cause to excuse the delay.
I don't know that it's a belief. It's more of the timeline that we're following. We have 2 weeks to submit it. We submitted it within those 2 weeks. Now we're waiting for the court to get back to us on whether or not those kids are going to be stepped down to the community or transferred to Barry J. That's very factual.
I mean, okay, I'm not factual or not factual, that there's, I feel like we're just talking in circles here. But okay, so it's fair to say that then by next Monday, you will not have 51 youth, 51 girls and gender expansive youth at Kilpatrick.
It's fair to say that we're waiting for the court to determine what we're going to do with the Kilpatrick boys that are there. So I
Or no
can't.
question. I don't
Well,
understand.
I'm
why
sorry,
this
Ms.
is not-
Kakani, if I was to be able to say that today the court was going to release all of those youth from Kilpatrick, then I could say this is what I'm doing tomorrow.
Okay, so
But
if
because I
today, so
don't
you're
know
saying
that-
if today the court was to say, yes, those 16 youth at Kilpatrick can be stepped down, it's your statement today that by tomorrow you would move 51 young people to
That's not my
Kilpatrick?
statement, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna let it go, because what I'm telling you is that because we're waiting for the court, I can't plan what's coming next. We have the court telling us that they're going to get back to us on those youth that we've requested step down. Now, we've already said that we're trying to be very mindful of the youth and how we're moving the youth and making sure that we're doing things appropriately. So no, I would not want to move 51 youth by tomorrow. But it sounds like you're saying that because we're not taking quick action, we're missing a deadline and we're not doing the right thing. We are doing the
not what
right
I
thing. We're
said.
following the court's order, and we're also trying to be mindful of how we move youth. So that's going to be my answer, and I'm going to leave it there.
So then, do you have housing that would be sufficient for staff that would support 51 young people at Kilpatrick?
Again, we've had things that we require the approval of the Coastal Commission on. So that's 1. 2, we've done alternative housing for staff before. 3, nothing in our policy actually says that we have to have housing to actually be able to staff that facility.
Okay, so then you'll have some youth or some staff who are not on the 56-hour work week?
1, we have the proposal that requires the approval from the Coastal Commission. 2, we've done alternative staffing housing before,
Mhm.
right? So that's a
Where, and those
possibility.
staff were housed at, or where were those staff residing at? What was the alternative housing?
We've utilized local hotels in the
Oh, okay.
areas for that,
Okay.
right? And 3, even if that wasn't an option, nothing says that we have to provide the housing for staff. So although we're trying to do several different things, you can still run the facility without having housing.
Okay, and then I guess the last question is programming. Is that set up so that when those 51 young people move to Kilpatrick, I feel like I've heard the chief say repeatedly that his intention is to provide tailored programming for this specific population based on their needs. Is there a programming plan that has also been outlined, and have providers been reached out to? Have contracts been entered into? What's the status of that?
We've worked with our existing contracts that already are in place to make sure that we can transfer anything that exists currently over to Campus Kilpatrick. So that's within our contracts department currently. We've also had a really good job of making Barry J more robust. We've asked the Barry J programming coordinator to assist with the programming that will occur over at Campus Kilpatrick. So the terms of expanding those contracts, new contracts, they're not quite there yet, but that is part of our plan, is to take the same type of action that we took for Barry J for Campus Kilpatrick.
And you've had providers express interest and like be able to, for example, travel all the way to Kilpatrick, because that is it's a unique facility that's quite far. It requires a lot more of people. So
We do have providers that have said they will be servicing our youth at Kilpatrick.
sorry, and there was one thing that you said that I just wanted to get clarification on. I think you said 36 youth had been assessed for fire camps. Those are 36 youth from Barry J had been assessed for fire camps?
That is correct.
Okay, because the order that I read was for predispo youth to be assessed. So had any predispo youth been assessed for fire camp?
Those are the predisposed youth that I'm referring to. They're over at LP. They're the SYTF youth.
Okay, you just said Barry J. So
I'm sorry, they're the youth that would be going to Barry J.
going to Barry J. Okay. And then did I hear you correctly when you said that DYD and DMH were slated to hold conversations with young people inside the facility about moves and, you know, whatever's going to be happening to the facilities?
We requested them to join probation in those conversations with the youth and the staff.
Okay. I just want to share that in my conversation with DYD, that is not their understanding, that they've been asked to join those conversations. So
We just talked about that at the recent community town hall in front of a whole group of people. So that is our intention, is to take part in those conversations, especially because we have credible messengers within the units that
Right.
have such good relationships with the youth. That is our intention.
okay.
I'll say one more question, and then I know you all have one last item to address, and we have DYD here, and then we have public comment. So do you want to take this last one?
Did you prepare the response to our requests for the June 9th meeting? There was a 3-pager that was prepared that was sent to us over the weekend.
Collaboratively.
Okay. So when we were here in May, the chief was here. I don't know if you watched that meeting or got a debrief from the chief, but he was very, very insistent that during the process to assess detained youth, that the PDs and the DAs and others were involved in that process. What I am reading on this 3-page document was that the only youth were the probation director, supervising deputy probation officer, and deputy probation officer twos. Can you attest that that's accurate?
So that's going to be the portion that Ms. Walker is going to be speaking to. So I'll let her do that presentation and maybe she can best answer your question.
Okay.
Good morning. So in short, yes, I can attest that that is the process that has occurred, but there are also 2 processes that are occurring with our department. We also had a board motion that was passed in 2023 and have been engaged with the public defender and other justice partners with evaluating detained youth cases. But the process that is the reassessment process that is being undertaken by our department based on the February 14th order to show cause hearing, that order is being assessed, the cases are being reassessed by probation staff. The process was shared with the partners by our previous chief deputy, Deputy Epps, prior to her retirement. And that process gave the criteria that was going to be used for the reevaluation.
So the POC recommendation that was our #1 recommendation, right? To actually reduce the number of young people that are being held in Los Angeles County facilities, but specifically Los Padrinos pre-adjudication. Are you opposed to actually including credible messengers, CBOs, PDs in these assessment evaluations to actually see some movement of bringing down the numbers to somehow, 6 or 7 months later, come into compliance? Are you willing to do that?
So I can't really respond on, officially on behalf of the department in that regard to say that we would include all of those different parties. But again, we are engaged with our justice partners, the public defender, well, the youth's attorney. So whether it's the public defender, an APD, or a private attorney, receives a list each week, and they are able to look at those cases and then bring forward youth that they would like to take a look at in terms of being released early. That process has been ongoing since the passing of a motion back in 2023. This new process that we are engaging in as a result of the order to show cause hearing is a reassessment being done of all new youth that are detained, either 1 or 2 weeks out. Every 1 to 2 weeks, we're distributing a list and we're utilizing the criteria that was shared with the partners. We look at the instant offense, we look at the youth's delinquency history, we look at the youth's behavior in juvenile hall, and those things to assess whether we're going to take them back to court for release consideration.
How would an attorney, would they come to you and say, I'd like them to be reconsidered, or what? When you're sending them that list, what's the process after that?
They respond. So I don't actually coordinate the process, but they do respond via email if they have any youth on that list that they would like to convene a meeting to discuss. And in that meeting, there are justice partners that are also involved. So the DA participates, the PD or the APD, whichever attorney group represents the youth, probation. And then if they ask other people to come, if the attorney asks other stakeholders to come, they are included in the meetings as well.
Go ahead. Commissioner Canales?
I have a clarifying question, and I know the attorneys already know this answer, but I'm confused. So at our last meeting, the chief said all the youth were already assessed and only 2 qualified for release, and that the public defenders were part of this and other people. So then when we asked more questions, then it was that he had to get back to us. So going from that answer last month, that all the youth were assessed and only 2 qualified, is this now a new procedure, or are you still going off of the chief's assessment, or you're starting something new, working with people and youth are being reassessed because according to the chief, they were already assessed? But I'm sure it's just me misunderstanding. So if you can clarify that.
Okay, so what I said was there are 2 processes that are occurring. So one has been in place since the passing of a motion in 2023 where we distribute a weekly list to the attorneys and they review that. And if they identify youth they would like to discuss for possible release to a least restrictive environment, they have that conversation. The process related to the order to show cause hearing, absolutely the process started. Our initial list was distributed on March 6th, and that was an assessment of the youth. So when you're saying a reassessment, the youth we're distributing a list every 1 to 2 weeks, and we are looking at the newly detained youth. And we send those out to the probation officer of record. So the case is assigned, we send it out to that assigned probation officer, and they review the case and decide if they're eligible to be returned for release consideration. And they utilize that criteria that I spoke of, looking at what the current offense is, looking at their delinquency history, looking at whether they've been on CDP on prior occasions and things of that nature. So they do an assessment of that, and then they will submit a report to court.
Okay, thank you.
Was there more that you all were going to present on this item? Because I wanted to make sure you all shared what you wanted to and then invite DYD to come up.
Well, unless anybody has any other questions, we've reviewed to date, we have reviewed over 400 youth. And we, like again, I said, we are distributing that list every 1 to 2 weeks to the probation officer to do the assessment on the newly detained youth.
Commissioner Kakani?
So I think the 2 things you're talking about, there's the structured release piece that I think was part of the 2023 motion. I believe Ms. Harada had come and presented a few times. It was a very small number of young people that were actually released pursuant to that structured release process. Many of the young people ended up being released anyway, I think just because of however it was that they came in. In my brief communication with some public defenders and defense attorneys, all of them have stated that those meetings are no longer happening. So I don't know if you have any data. on how many structured release meetings have occurred even in the last month?
So there haven't been any meetings that have been held, but the lists are being sent to them. They initiate whether they want a meeting. So they have not identified any youth that they would like to meet on.
Who holds that process for the probation department?
Senior Director Bobby Ensminger.
Okay. And so probation, because before, I believe it was Ms. Harada who also identified like which young people were based on like the breakdown that was given in that board motion, like, you know, who was coming in for what and who would be like eligible even for the structured release process and then would also initiate some contact. So at this juncture, it's just the defense counsel who initiates
No,
the
so
contact with the probation department if they feel like they have a young person who should be like released.
the process has not changed. So probation continues to distribute a list of those youth. And then the attorney groups will then identify out of their, because they only get the youth that are assigned to their like public defender, APD. And then they identify any youth that they would like to meet on.
Okay. So, but you're saying that no structured release meetings have happened in the last month?
No, they have
Okay.
not.
In the last, I don't know, since the beginning of 2025, have there
In
been?
the last several months, they have not, but I know that the lists are continuously being distributed
Okay.
for the opportunity to
Okay.
schedule.
But
those
basically,
meetings.
it's not resulting in the release of any young people?
No,
Okay.
it's not.
And then I'm looking at the criteria that was provided for review or consideration for a young person to potentially be released based on this internal process that probation is holding. And I see including instant offense, prior history, prior CDB participation, behavior in juvenile, et cetera. Is there like an actual full list or is there like some sort of, I don't know if it's like a checklist, it'd be helpful to know what the full list of things are that the department is including when the probation director, supervising deputy probation officer, and deputy probation officer 2 are reviewing this information.
So those are the main categories that are being reviewed, but each case is assessed individually. So you may have where a youth is currently on probation and they're looking at their history of compliance with court orders. You could have a brand new youth and you're looking at, you know, limited information, things that are in the detention report and things of that nature. So.
Okay. So there's no like full list of things. It kind of just based on who that young person is, you're doing an assessment.
Yes, I think it's an individual assessment. So,
Okay. I don't see LADS, the LA detention screener score written here. Is that something that's also reviewed?
no, it's not.
Why is that?
It's just not used. They're looking at, so the detention screener is your initial detention document that helps to decide whether the youth is going to be detained initially. And this is a reassessment and they're looking at all of those other elements because we're not using just the intake criteria. We're also looking at other things that the intake criteria does not take into consideration.
But I mean, there's also I think we saw some data where a significant number of young people who are recommended for release based on the LAD score, that determination was overridden by the intake department at probation. And it wasn't clear if there was like an additional review process. So like, why is it that that's not then reviewed by these other folks? When we know that sometimes the detention screener score is overridden, like would it not benefit to have like another set of eyes look at like whether that was like a necessary override or perhaps irrelevant to whether a young person might be safe for release?
Yeah, I'm not aware that the last score, detention is being overridden for the last score. So I don't want to speak to that.
Okay.
But
oh, sorry. I know that there was a contract between probation and the Vera Institute looking at the incarceration of girls and gender expansive youth. And I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was over 50% of girls in gender expansive youth had their LAD scores overridden. So recommended for release, but the department decided to override that. That's like a public document. It's been shared with the board, with you all. So clearly there's an issue with the LAD scores being overridden by the probation department. I'm not sure what the exact number is for boys, but just feels like something that maybe folks should take a closer look at.
I can say, Kakani, I can say I hear you, I receive what you're saying, and we'll discuss it and see if that's something that we need to add to our assessment.
Okay. And then the other thing I'm seeing here is behavior in juvenile as one of the criteria for review or consideration. As I stated earlier, LP is operating unlawfully, staffing is an issue, you have folks from the field coming in, leaving, call outs, things of that nature. So there's, I don't know, in my mind, a lot of things that would impact the behavior of a young person that is outside of their control, or that is impacting the way they show up. And I'm not really seeing how that is being addressed in this process.
Right. I think that the fact that it's not the only criteria that's being evaluated, it is just one of the criteria. So it doesn't mean that, they had a negative incident and that would exclude them from being eligible for being returned for release consideration. It's just one of the things that we do look at.
But like, I'm not even, you're saying that, and I appreciate that, but like, I'm not even like there's, I don't know, in my mind, right? If I'm running through a young person's case and I'm like, there should be some like guiding documentation, right? So is it whether a young person has 2 incidents inside, 1 incident? Like, how do we determine whether an incident inside is sufficient enough to not recommend release or insufficient enough to recommend release?
So
for
when a
example?
report is prepared, it is reviewed by a supervisor, and then we have a process where we're sending it to our admin team, who is also doing an additional review. So we're trying to be mindful in terms of just reviewing the report at multiple layers as well.
You're talking about the release report or whatever the case assessment
Yes.
is? And are you noticing any inconsistencies or any, like, is there any kind of takeaway in how this process is? I'm just like, nothing in here to me screams like consistency or, I don't know, like just like a structure that can be followed that people can check themselves on, right? Like, I don't know, when I'm doing a case, for example, right? Like I have like a metric by which to be like, yes, I've done these things, I followed this protocol, I've read the discovery, I've organized, whatever it is. But like, I'm just, is there some metric by which people can check how well they're assessing?
So those
a
are the
young person's
criteria
case?
that we're using, and we're using our supervisors to review those cases. We're also we added another layer of review of those cases. But I think that when probation officers prepare reports, there's not a checkoff box for everything. We use professional judgment, and then it's reviewed by the supervisor. And now we're adding another layer of review.
Can I ask I'm sorry, just a quick question. Is there any consideration of what supports the young person has in the community, whether it's their family or organizations they're connected with, to kind of assess, okay, maybe some incidents have occurred, for example, in the facility, but when they come home, they're returning to a community who can support them. So how is that taken into consideration?
They do reach out to the family and speak with the parent or guardian.
Okay. Commissioner Ship? Canales, sorry.
Real quickly, because I'm looking at the numbers for Los Padrinos. Are you familiar with the detention reduction plan? Is that something?
Yes.
Yes.
Vaguely.
So, I'm looking at the numbers. I want to say it was around October or September or November where we got the detention reduction plan. And that was we were supposed to be reducing the population of Los Padrinos, sending more youth home instead of inside the facilities. When I'm looking at the release numbers, uh, right here in July 2024, there were 204 youth who were released or sent somewhere else, right? Um, that and 85 youth on CDP, 44 on suitable placements, 27 on home, right? And that's before the detention reduction plan. And as I look to see the detention reduction plan and start to look at those numbers, there are less youth being sent home, being sent to these places. Um, So my question is, did you guys ever really actually put in place their detention reduction plan? Especially when I see youth being moved to Men's Central Jail. Well, let me rephrase that. Not Men's Central Jail, but being moved to under the sheriffs. When I see youth being moved out of counties, was there ever any like real movement on the detention reduction plan? Because I'm not seeing that piece of it.
Before you answer, can I just say the numbers that Commissionership is reading are attached to today's agenda. They relate to this agenda item, but they're actually attached under agenda item number 5 if you're looking for them. Sorry, please answer.
I think what I would want to say is that the trends of the youth that come into custody is out of our control. So when I look at the population and I look at the statistics of who is in custody today, that might be different from who was in custody at that time, which makes it a little bit different on whether or not they're eligible for release to the community or something else. And I know I specifically pulled up the data from last week to see all of the charges that our youth are there on. I don't know if that's similar to what we saw before, but we know that can impact whether or not a youth is eligible to be released to the community or something else. I think we would have to really look at who was in custody at that time versus who we have in custody right now.
I think for me, the bigger issue is that when we talked about Los Padrinos, and this was prior to Los Padrinos illegally housing youth, but when we talked about youth being moved out of Los Padrinos, we talked to them about not just shifting the youth, but reducing the population across, right? But we see that youth have just been shifted, and that is a problem for me. And also, I think also last year we talked about not charging more youth with adult crimes, right? Not direct filing them or just sending them up to the sheriffs. But as we see, at least 20 youth have been sent to the sheriffs. I mean, like this is, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because when we come and we talk to somebody else from probation, at one point we get, hey, this is what we're doing, this is the plan, this is where we're going, and then we look across a almost 10-month span, and the plan was never put into place, and now we're here with new plans and we're saying we're going to do this and do that, and my hope here is just to understand, like, how are we actually putting these things in place? Because so far since I've been coming to these POC meetings, every plan that we've talked about has not been put into place as they were supposed to be put into place. I'm trying to make sure that, especially when we talk about these young people and reassessing these young people, that this is an actual plan instead of it's just something where we say we sent out a bunch of surveys and we did it, but we're actually doing it because the detention reduction plan has shown just a switch, a population shift, and not instead of just a population reduction. So I'm trying to make sure that this plan is really going to be the real plan, and this is something that we're actually doing meaningfully instead of just saying we're doing it.
So I'd like to say, I remember you asking that question way back then, and I was impressed by the question because you made it sound like, did you just move kids to camp? Is that why you got your numbers down? I remember hearing you say that. So I appreciate analyzing the data like that. Looking at the data that was provided, it looks like in July of 24, 85 were CDP. In March, 92 were CDP. So it seems to be pretty consistent. I see that the numbers fluctuate, which is to what I'm saying, that I think it depends on who's in custody at the time. You had 27 in July of 24 for release home. You have 33 in March of 25. So the numbers aren't that far off, but I just really think that it depends on who's in custody at the time. Not every youth qualifies for CDP. And sometimes you get a big group of very similar behaviors that come in and they don't qualify for CDP. So you're going to see trends that go up and down. But I do think that although the process may not please everybody, and there's always room for improvement on any process that exists, we have a process. We are reassessing. We are going back. We are making efforts to get some of these kids into the community and into placement, into anything other than detention. But considering the large population of Los Angeles, we don't have representative in custody. When you see who's in custody and the numbers of what we have at this time, they're very serious 707B offenses. And so it's hard to say, yes, you just get to go home on CDP and we trust that you're going to come back to court. Some of these cases don't call for that. And I really encourage you to take a look at the data. And it was part of our depopulation report that shows that who's in custody. We continue to work with them. We want to see them go home. At the end of the day, every kid needs to go home. But at this current time, these kids are in custody for these reasons. But we some credit to the fact that there is an evaluation and a process in place, and that we're trying to work together to get some of these kids alternative locations.
And I'll just end it at this. For me, what I recommend is we shouldn't see a comprehensive plan that says for those youth who, and it was around, I want to say around 30% that were able to come home at that time. But for me, I don't think that we should be coming up here saying that we're going to do these things and not doing them. Because that is, especially when this is a community forum and we're talking to people, there are parents in the crowd who believe that their young people would come home at some point, and then it's not being done. So I think for me, if this is a plan that we are doing, I am okay with this, and I understand what you're saying around it depends on the population, but don't say that we're going to do something if we're not going to do it.
I think Commissioner Canales, and then we should move to DYD and public comment. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner. We can come to you after when we return. Are you sure? Okay.
I just wanted to say, so from assessing the files and the youth and their cases and everything, but yet when I've seen some probation where their documentation is, for instance, they're talking after 8:30 lights out, so they're referring them back to court. I mean, I've seen these documentations that, you know, they want them referred back to court and you know, write these real negative reports and everything. So I think, you know, to Commissioner Shipp's point, irrelevant of what their charges are right now, you know, as you mentioned, some of their charges, when you continue to add things on like this, no matter what, I mean, because the presumption of innocence, no matter what their charges are, they are being held on a presumption of innocence until proven guilty, right? That is supposed to be our standard. So while you are detaining these youth, looking at the charges and then adding on these kind of notes, are these being taken into consideration? And if this probation officer has excessive notes similar, are they being counseled? Is there a path, a clear path for them on what they should take into consideration to do a court referral and have somebody transferred to an adult facility because they were talking after 8:30 at night? And then also, do you encourage positive notes from your probation staff? And if positive notes are implemented and you have 5 probation that all write positive, but one supervisor saying they're all lying, what do you do in a situation like that? So there's a lot of scenarios that are very concerning, but that need attention or we won't be able to move forward. These are real life scenarios. They're documented. So I think these kind of things all need to be taken into consideration, how to reassess, how to reevaluate, and even maybe having some more training or something.
So the first thing I'm going to say is that if you know of a case outside of the stage, outside of this room, where a youth was referred to adult court because they were talking on quiet at 8:30, I want you to talk to me, because that's not a standard that we would have. Now, could that be part of an overall encompassing report about a youth's behavior? And although it doesn't sound like it's serious, and I wouldn't try to put more weight on it than it should have. What I'm saying is when you're in an open setting and you're trying to keep group control, sometimes kids do things that make it a little bit hard to maintain control. And so you might put a note on that, but that shouldn't be a count in a move to an adult court or a count on a 777 violation or anything else. So outside of here, if that is true, please bring that to my attention. In terms of what weight we add to positive behavior, I think we add a lot of weight to positive behavior, which is why we have the behavior management program the way that we do. They get points for some things that are simple outside of institutions, but because we are trying to form and shape behavior, we make sure that we're actually acknowledging things and giving them points for them. So they get points throughout the periods of the day where they're going to school, where they are having a good 2-hour block, having breakfast, making their beds, and all of those things add up to positive points on the behavior management program. And those are the things that are taken into consideration when we look at early release. When I just mentioned that a youth is sentenced or ordered adjudicated from 7 to 9 months, that could be the difference between the 7 and the 9, right? They're running their program, they're following those daily tasks. It doesn't always have to be a PCMS entry, it could be just the points that they're receiving. Positive PCMS entries are important too. I know I did them consistently, and I know several staff that actually do them consistently. To your question about an officer who puts negative notes aren't always a reflection poorly upon the officer who's putting them in. That officer may also be putting in positive notes on youth. And sometimes the officer says, hey, I want to put something positive, but you're behaving negatively. Give me something positive to write, and I'm going to write something positive. Just because an officer is holding a youth accountable doesn't mean that they're doing something wrong. And I think that there's this stigma that because they're saying that they're behaving poorly, that the officer is doing something wrong. They should be putting positive as well as negative. It all goes together as part of a youth program. And I wouldn't even say that they're negative, they're just areas that could use improvement, right? And those things belong in the system. And unfortunately, we don't always have the time to put both good and negative into the system. And so sometimes people are having to figure out, what kind of program is the youth running. But I appreciate the feedback. I look at PCMS entries. I've been one to write PCMS entries, even as a manager, when I've seen kids doing good. So it is a tool, but it should not be abused. And so if, again, back to your point, if somebody got sent back to court on accounts because they were talking on quiet after 8:30, please let me know.
Yeah, thank you for that. I really appreciate that, and I definitely will. No, and I was just confused because I saw some positive comments, some positive notes from probation, and then it was questioned why were they writing this? But wouldn't you encourage this type of feedback from probation, whether it be positive or negative, if they're the ones working with the youth on a daily basis?
If feedback is encouraged, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So under this agenda item, we also had DYD who was going to share some takeaways and feedback from the community dialogue sessions. And I believe we have Director David Carroll on the line who wants to start that conversation off.
Oh, okay. I didn't know I could unmute myself. Sorry. Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm not there. I had scheduling conflicts, which became even more complicated with this weekend's the incidents regarding immigration that we are being briefed on. So I apologize for not being there. Wanted to start, I think, first by at least addressing the question regarding the sessions, the family and youth sessions. DYD to this point has not been invited to those sessions. And to this point, we don't know the dates. However, we are expecting, anticipating participation in those events, but it has not happened at this point. So I just wanted to clarify that it is true. Both things are true, right? We plan on participating, but we haven't been invited at this point to participate in the session specifically for family and for young people that are currently in the facilities. To discuss briefly the listening sessions, we've held 4 community listening sessions so far, with the 5th to take place on this Thursday. The sessions are in each one of the supervisorial districts and are designed to give community the opportunity to hear about the plan directly from probation, to hear about services that will be offered by public health, mental health, and DYD. There have been representatives from probation, DMH, DPH, and DYD at each one of those sessions. The last one will be this Thursday in South LA at Magic Johnson Park. The sessions are kind of twofold. It's a panel discussion with the aforementioned partners. And then what I think is the most productive part, individual group activities, working at each table, talking about the plan and talking about different aspects of the plan and things that young people may need. Ms. Roman has been at multiple of those sessions, so she could probably speak to it also, as well as a couple of our staff people who are currently in the audience. What we are hearing the most at this point, and we are going to put together a full consolidated, for lack of a better word, report on everything that we heard. We've captured every question that community members have asked. We've asked them to write those questions on index cards, so we actually have a written document of all the questions that were asked. And we're also capturing all of the notes at each one of the tables. We have note takers that are entering the notes into their computers real time. So we'll have a pretty robust set of notes. The themes that are emerging right now mostly are around transportation. and trying to figure out how families, parents, folks can get to their young person, specifically in Malibu at Kilpatrick, but also at Barry J. There have been some conversations about the lack of available public transportation for young people to be served. Some of the things that you all have mentioned in this meeting, assessment for young people, trying to figure out what young person doesn't necessarily have to be in the facilities. That has been a pretty common theme that has come up in those sessions, as well as a laundry list of other questions, concerns, et cetera. A lot of it around communication, around how families will be notified, around how communities will be engaged in this process. Not only the communities of the young person directly, but just those communities in general, so they know what's happening in the communities in which they live or work. Those are kind of the major themes. We are bringing all that back to both to the facilities meetings that we're having. I think we've got 2 of those today. There are multiple times per week where all of the departments that work closely inside the facilities are coming together. That would include LACO, DMH, DPH, Health Services, ISD, us, probation, obviously. So we are all meeting multiple times per week to talk about the plan. We're also going to provide a synopsis of the sessions to each one of the board offices for their review. And if they choose to take action on any of the items, any of the requests that come out of those meetings, they will have that opportunity. I believe that is all that I have. I'm certainly open for any questions. And again, apologize for not being with you in person today.
Thank you. I believe we may be just confirming that we're moving to public comment. Just one moment. On all of them. Okay, so we will go ahead and move to public comment, which is going to, I'm sorry.
Just really quickly, are you guys able to address the inconsistency based on the update that we got from DYD, where you claimed that there was outreach to participate in those conversations with families and something said contrary on?
I think what he said was we don't have dates set yet, but that they're aware that they're going to be participating. There's no date set for any of those engagements.
I heard that there was no invitation.
Perhaps we can ask him again.
Yeah, I think it's semantics. I mean, I think it's there's no date, so there's no invitation. There's been an invitation for us to participate, right? But I haven't gotten something that said, when I say invitation, I'm thinking about something that's going on my calendar, right? So I know where I'm supposed to be and when I'm supposed to be there. So there has been interest in DYD participating, but there's been no formal invitation, to participate in that event at this point, likely because the dates haven't been set.
Okay, great. This wasn't a gotcha moment. This was an opportunity to clarify. So
no, I appreciate it. I'm solid because it was one of the first things I said. They're good partners. They're good with our kids. We want to make sure that they're there to keep the tone good. So there was no part of me that thought he did not know he was invited.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, so I think what we're going to do right now, just given the time, is unify public comment on this item, number 3, and on the tabling of the 2 following items related to the staffing and the requests for information. And I'll just say, you'll be able to see on the memo that the vast majority of the requests for information have already been provided. Some of them, the due dates have not yet come due. There's really only one item that was provided but is incomplete, which I feel very confident about being able to work with the department to solve. And so we will be taking public comment. So you can come up and give public comment on item 3. And then I think I need Commissioner Chair Terry to get a motion to table items 4 and 5. I'm looking at Shantae to make sure that sounds right. Okay.
Do we do that now? Yes. Okay, can we have a motion to chair items 4 and 5, just in the interest of time?
I move to approve the tabling of items 4 and 5 for a future meeting. Okay, for a future meeting.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. So that has been seconded by Commissioner, I heard Kakani first. I know there was someone else after that. Any comments? Do I have to take comments?
No, I think we'll take public comment
Okay, so we'll
first and
take
then
public
come back.
comment and then come back to commissioners.
Okay, so if you're in the room and would like to make public comment, please make your way to the podium. If you're online, you can only make public comment if you're on WebEx or calling into WebEx. Please use the little raise your hand function and we'll get a list going. If you're calling into WebEx, please dial *3. That will put your phone number in line for us. If you're watching on YouTube and want to make public comment, you have to log on WebEx. We don't take public comment through YouTube. And we will begin. Welcome, Mr. Bell.
Hello, my name is Thomas Bell, Camp Vice President for Local 685. I just want to clarify something real quick. No one's ever gotten refiled for talking at night. If they were refiled for talking at night, it's because they either got up, yelled, and tried to cause a riot, either yelled gang slurs, racial slurs, and tried to call an all-out riot. That's the only thing that would get somebody to that level, is causing a riot at night. But just talking at night, nah, we don't do that. You know, we all talk at night. So as far as the movement, first I want to say what you did with Camp Page. I like what you guys did with Camp Page. The kids trickled in. You didn't bring them in a large group, and the officers are, they're at Rocky or they're at Alpha Ball, and I think they prefer that better than what they thought they was going to go. I think a lot of questions still hold up, and a lot of communication needs to be said with what's happening with Kirby and Kilpatrick. A lot of officers are wondering what's going to happen with them. Are you guys going to force all the women from Kirby to go to Kilpatrick to work with the girls? Are you going to force the men, which Kilpatrick right now is mainly men, to go to Barry J with the boys? What's going to happen with them? I think communication, and they come to ask me, and I got to say I don't know, because the department hasn't informed me as camp vice president what's going on. So I think a lot more communication. Like I said, you guys did what Paige was good, but even in that level, we didn't know what was going to happen. It just, okay, next week, this is where you guys are going to go. They were happy with it, but the fact that they didn't know beforehand was troubling, and like what Ms. Canales said, if things go wrong, if next week they say, okay, all you guys got to show up here and we don't have housing for you, so you're on 40 days, that's not going to work. Anything besides the 56 at Kilpatrick is not working. I'll let you know. All right.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Pettis.
Good morning. The Board of Supervisors declared basically DYD as the subject matter experts, and they were created to align with the Care First, Jail Last. And I applaud Mr. Carroll and everybody for their programs and services providing for the youth. However, Los Angeles probation officers have been blamed for the decisions of the Board of Supervisors and the probation administration. As officers, we spend more time with the youth in our care than we spend with our own children. We know these children. It just makes sense that DYD gets to know our minors. DYD should house our minors, which would allow them to be an integral part of rehabilitating our minors. DYD would have the opportunity to be a standard for other California counties to adopt. If we bring them in and we coexist, it's a few things that we won't have to talk about anymore. We won't have to talk about safety of minors. We don't have to talk about depopulation, staff shortages, facility changes, continuity of care, permission to enter detention facilities because you're already there, and wraparound services. But it has to be consistent. And we're talking about, we need DYD in there from 2 to 10 every day, 7 days a week, consistently working with probation so that we can maybe address something before it even rises. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thank you. I want to thank the panel for the invite. First and foremost, my name is Serafin Leon, and I'm the Deputy Director of Life 2.0, a nonprofit organization that provides comprehensive reentry services for the incarcerated and formerly incarcerated. And I think it's very fitting for my commentary today. I'm pleased to learn that Probation Department has approved the release and transfer of the SYTF youth at CVK to camps and back into the community. which brings me to say that my organization, Life 2.0, has recently added a housing department, and we've acquired a residential facility in this very community of Compton, just half a mile down the street. And we're ready to provide reentry services to the SYTFs. I happen to have worked with the Anti-Recidivism Coalition as a credible messenger supervisor for 2 years. I worked at Barry J and CVK supervising the team of credible messengers. I'm very well familiar with the youth population there at CVK as well as Barry J. And my facility, we have everything. All the services, the wraparound services, we're quite equipped and suitable to provide these services to these youth. All I'm asking for is an opportunity to be able to provide these services, just as Boys Republic, ARC, Ramp LA, Amity, all these CBOs that I've worked with before, they're contributing. We want the opportunity to be able to contribute as well to these youth. I know I spoke with Deputy Director Roman this past Friday about this, and if you can direct me with who to speak with in the probation department to maybe secure a contract and be able to work in partnership with Department of Probation, that would be very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a message for the county council. So I am here trying to speak my agenda items, but the commission continue to refuse to give me an agenda. And then I want to inform the county council that during the Brown Act, the board, whatever the government board, you have to provide a reasonable commendation. In prison, I was learned how to read and how to write. So I cannot understand whatever they were talking about. But if I have an agenda, I can read, so I can understand. I can provide a better comment. And then I also want the county council to verify with the employee that how many times I have been here and asking for the agenda. And then right now, I still cannot get an agenda, and I do not understand why. I want to speak on the agenda item, and I want to read the agenda item. I do not have access to computer and or internet or whatever, but I want to continue to provide a public comment on the agenda item, but I was continue to refuse to have an agenda in my hand. And I want to inform the county council, is that a violation of the board right, the Brown Act? Is that a violation of the reasonable accommodation? Because I have been every other board, I have never been refused of a simple agenda. We are talking about depopulation plan. We are talking about LPJ. We are talking about probation. And I was thinking about, forget about that. I think you need to fix the problem of the agenda first. So if you cannot fix a 1-minute job of getting an agenda, forget about your LPJ probation. I think you continue to fail the public. And then I just want to inform the county council, this is the 6, 7, 8 times I have been here, and I want an agenda. County council.
Eileen, proceed.
I just had a question related to the redistribution that you mentioned. I know there have been some issues with continuances being filed because of a lack of staffing, and it seemed that you were beginning to address the redistribution of staff to those positions to support, and I think that was included in the staffing analysis that y'all have been working on, but I wasn't sure if that had been uploaded yet or when it will be made public. Or if, I don't know if you're able to answer questions, but yeah.
Yes, if you could go ahead and answer.
The staffing plan has not been approved for distribution yet. It hasn't been provided to BSCC, so it's an internal document at this time.
Okay.
Okay, we have a couple of speakers online, and let's start with Raquel Derfler. Raquel, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please
Okay,
begin.
great. Thank you. Good morning. This is Raquel Derfler, campaign coordinator with Cancel the Contract out in the Antelope Valley. So it appears that the response we're getting today from folks here that our representing probation department is in line with their usual playbook of avoiding a direct answer in response to the commission's very thoughtful questions. So it's really their lack of actions or their actions that have created conditions in Los Padrinos that led to Judge Espinosa's ruling, approving the probation department's own depopulation plan. It's alarming probation is holding on so tightly to the status quo to a system which is harming our youth. Contrary to what they want the public to believe, probation plays a large part in which youth are actually detained in those facilities. It appears as though probation is doing the bare minimum and executing their own plan. If probation is actually serious about getting a true handle on what is occurring at Los Padrinos, they would be prepared and working on all possible responses to any order they receive from the courts. When youth justice is thought of as a process centered around compassion and accountability, the facilities will actually be made safe for both the youth and its staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Raquel. We will go next to call-in user 3. Your number starts with 323, and you need to dial *6 to unmute yourself. We can hear you.
Hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You can begin.
Hey, everybody. It's Helen Eigenberg calling. Sorry if you can hear noise in the back. I'm on an airplane, but I just wanted to call in. I've been listening, and it's really hard to have confidence with the lack of answers to a lot of these questions and just the vagueness. The North Star here is no more harm to these youth and or the staff. One thing that did not come up is the nurse. There are 2 pregnant youth we learned on last Tuesday at the Board of Supervisors. Are they going to be in place? Where's the hospital that these youth will give birth so that they can have healthy pregnancies and healthy deliveries? And also, I don't know if it was talked about, but these youth that have been building relationships with the CBOs, with programming, will they be able to stay with those folks that they've built the trust when they are moved? And then also just really concerned that no major moves happen before there is clearance by BSCC, because we keep hearing rumor that there's going to be a disregard for that. So I just want reassurance that that's not going to happen. And it's still really confusing that in May, the chief stood before us and said only 2 were eligible for release. And now suddenly there's, quote, all this reassessing going on and not instilling a lot of confidence in us probation. And I really thank the POC for all the questions this morning. Thank you so much.
Helen, thank you. We'll go next to Luis Rodriguez. Luis, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you can begin.
Okay, thank you very much. I do want to address the comments made by probation representatives regarding the list that we the defenders receive regarding the least restrictive list. And the comment was made that we're not sending anything back. Let me put this a little bit of context, because look, one thing that I do appreciate is context and transparency. I want to make it very clear that the Public Defender's Office has not been an obstacle to having our youth released. These lists that we get, the majority of them, those cases have been settled by our attorneys, are in a disposition state with the court. So when we get a list of 20, maybe one is a case adequate for an MDT, which is how it's referred. So I just want to make this clear, because I try to work with everybody, but I get a little worked up when folks make a representation that the Public Defender's Office is not being collaborative and is not willing to participate in these efforts. But again, the heavy lifting is done by our attorneys in court, trying to get our kids released despite efforts by probation. And that was the comments that I needed to make. Thank you, Wendy. And if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer those questions.
Thank you, Luis. We'll go next to Ava. No last name, right, Ismael?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, please begin.
And we also have available beds for youth. We have an intensive program. We serve probation youth already. And we also have a 24/7 youth development center that is specifically for youth on probation or that are gang impacted. So we are well situated to also get a contract for release. And what my question is, and I hope you can answer it, is there going to be some kind of open process for allowing CBOs to provide services for these youth? Or are you only limiting it to Amity and Boys Republic with negotiated contracts?
Ava, before you drop off, your voice cut off at the beginning. Can you say the name of when you introduced yourself, we didn't hear you.
Yes, Ava Lanye, the president of Whole Systems Learning. We have a 24/7 youth development center specifically for youth on probation or gang impacted. We also have housing available that would be fully staffed and where our program would be done on site, but they would also have access to our center. And I want to know. Oh, okay.
Yeah, no,
Can
we
my
did hear the rest of your comment. It was just that first introduction that was missed.
And can my question be answered? Can my question be answered?
Yes.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, Ava. So if you can stay on the line and provide the information, I'll take it. We're working on expanding what our programming looks like and what it looks like to be able to actually be able to provide that data to us. The gentleman mentioned I got his information on Friday and I have already forwarded that information on. So until we have a better process, you can send it to me.
So if you can put your contact information in the chat on WebEx, we will get it to Deputy Director Roman.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go next to Lupe Ross.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can. Good morning, Lupe.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm tired. I'm tired of this. Going back and forth years and years. And it's just stepped up worse and worse. Nothing is getting better. DYD was put in place to help the youth, help the families. And that's what we need to devote our time and energy to. Enough is enough. We're tired of the lies. We're tired of the promises and the kids being placed all over where the parents can't get to. The fentanyl death, the gladiator fighting. I mean, how can we believe that this is going on to our youth in our county at this time? Probation officers, individual ones, I know are excellent. Camp Rocky, Camp Alphabom are excellent. I know that. But DYD needs to just take over. Board of Supervisors just have to step in because enough is enough. In the county, look at all, we just got paperwork from the court this weekend for all to sign up for lawsuits. We're taxpayers also. We just paid that McLaren lawsuit and we all just got notified in court, I mean, in the mail, a district court probation should not exist. Probation officers should be transferred to DYD and with that new administration, then maybe we can have some peace out here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lupe. We have one more comment and then Deputy Director Roman is going to respond. That was from Crystal.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can begin.
Oh, okay. I'm Crystal with Cancel the Contract. I just want to echo some of these other comments. Like earlier this year about the Los Padrinos teens that were hospitalized after suspected overdoses, and now we're getting ready to pay out $2.67 million in settlement money for the gladiator fights. it just seems that there needs to be more accountability of the staff to make sure the same issues are not occurring. These patterns keep repeating, and they're costing us too much money, and the children are still not rehabilitated, and it's causing them more harm than good. Like every day they remain trapped in this broken system, their chances of success diminish. Our community's future depends on your actions. Somebody needs to either step in, and Chief Rosa needs to stand down, or they need to help him, because like he said at the last meeting, I'm I'm doing the best I can. Maybe it's not the best he can. Maybe somebody else needs to help him. It's for these children, and we're paying too much money, and it's just getting worser and worser.
Thank you, Crystal. That's all our public commenters for today.
I know you were going to give a response, but sir, now that you do have the agenda, did you want to make an additional public comment? Was there something you wanted to speak on now that you have the written agenda? Okay.
Thank you. So I wanted to speak to Mr. Rodriguez calling in. Thank you for the call in, Mr. Rodriguez, because if we made anything seem like if the PD's office is a barrier, that's not what we were trying to say. What the intention was, when you're asking the process is that we provide them with the list, and they make an assessment of it and put anybody forward that we need to be discussing for potential release. But I don't want it to seem as if we were saying that they're a barrier to the process. We provide it to them, and whenever necessary, they can contact us and we can move forward with an MDT. I don't know if Ms. Walker wanted to add anything, but definitely not presenting that the PD's office is a barrier. If anything, they're a great collaborator with us.
Absolutely. That's what I wanted to say, that they are, we are very collaborative with the Public Defender's Office, but also that I think, to Ms. Kakanian's point, it has not yielded much release of youth because the attorneys, as he pointed out, are working in the courtroom on behalf of the youth at each hearing. So it does not yield the release considerations or the opportunities that I think the motion thought it would. And I think that's what has been demonstrated, that they're released through that process that you pointed out, Ms. Harada brought to light sometime in the past when the motion was first passed.
Commissioner Jackson?
Is it open for commissioner comments now?
Yeah, we're done with public comment. Yes.
Okay, great. So I wanted to follow up on my earlier question about updates on the implementation of certain things in the plan. I don't know how possible it is. I know back in the day when Central was undergoing a lot of construction in different units, it was very difficult for us to track progress. And I personally found that checklist very helpful when I was doing my inspections. As an accountability tool, I would like for us to maybe curate a list of a facility-specific list, perhaps, with all the different areas that need to be satisfied in order for the facility to be suitable to house youth. So yeah, maybe some sort of matrix or something with not only ISD-related updates, because that one feels really kind of out of touch, and we don't know what's going to happen with things like that. But yeah, whatever we can get to understand where progress is.
Commissioner Jackson, I will volunteer to work with Deputy Director Roman on that. And the list that Commissioner Jackson's referring to was something that was developed collaboratively between MSB and the POC, I believe. It was a number of years ago. So I'll send it to you so you can see it, and then we can see if that's something we could move forward with.
It was very helpful.
It was basically a list of the items that needed to be, that there were improvements, things like HVAC and other types of rehabilitation of the physical plant at Central, and then the status of those upgrades. So we can talk about that between now and the next meeting.
That'd be great.
Commissioners, any other commissionership?
I kind of just want to bring it back to your attention. So last meeting, I did ask for the plan around Barry J, especially now knowing that there won't be any repairs. What does that step down look like, and what is the plan around that? How are you incentivizing the youth to still want to step down and be in the same place.
So Barry J already has a step-down process in place. Not every youth that was eligible for step-down went to Campus Kilpatrick. As you mentioned, the population was at 20. We had more youth that were eligible for step-down. So the process is already embedded into the facility. It exists. In terms of not having a Kilpatrick anymore for youth, we're going to have to do that with Unit AB for right now. So we're looking at, and that's not the only unit, but we're looking at all the incentives, right? As you move through your stages, what different incentives can we have? We know that the youth from Campus Kilpatrick had the opportunity to go to excursions. Those are things that we still plan on keeping within the step-down process. Nothing is going to be taken away from the step-down process that existed and might enhance what is already in place over at Barry J. Nightoff. But just to be clear, there's already a process because we had kids stepping down to the community directly from Barry J. already.
The reason I asked is because it was referred to as a step down by the chief some time ago, but also from the youth themselves, they have said like they're waiting a year plus to go to actual step down. So they don't, I don't know if maybe there's something you could talk to them about, or but they don't feel like they're stepping down to Barry J. They feel like Campus Kilpatrick is the next step, and right now they're asking, what is left for me? Should I even be doing good anyway? They're losing the incentive, so I'm trying to figure out what the incentive is.
So part of this depopulation plan, and again, giving too much makes it something that you'll hold me to next meeting. And go, didn't you say? So one of the things that we're looking at is unit A, B, C, D, E, F. Those units are on the hill and making those more of step-down buildings. We know that currently we have TV as a step-down building. So as the population expands and the staffing increases, we have the opportunity to have more step-down buildings. What stage goes into what building, that's being worked out by the facility, but that's something that's part of our bigger vision for what the step down looks like.
Any other questions? And then I think we have to vote, right?
Okay, so the vote is on the tabling of the two items. So you can just say yes, no, or abstain. Yes.
Can I just add, just wrote this. Can I just add one thing to that list that I think Commissioner Jackson was requesting? I think it would also be helpful to align that with staffing. I don't know if you included that, but just in addition to how many like outstanding projects and like construction things need to happen, but also a list of programming that will follow those young people and a list of whether it's DMH, whether it's LACO, whether it's probation, but having a sense of how many staff will follow those young people.
No, thank you so much for that, because the previous list was like construction specific, but I think this one can be as robust as needed, especially because there are so many different components of the plan that we're trying to track. So whatever can be included in that based on what Commissioner Connie said.
Okay, so this vote is on tabling items 4 and 5 from the agenda until the next meeting, which will be June 23rd. Please join us. I don't actually know where the meeting is. Maybe someone can remind me. Is it at? I don't, none of us know. It will be on our website and you'll get an email about it. It might be at St. Anne's. I believe it is at St. Anne's. And actually, we do have confirmation that the chief will attend that meeting. We received that confirmation last week. So with that, I will call the roll for the vote. Commissioner Shipp?
Yes.
Commissioner Canales?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Commissioner Kakani?
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson?
Aye.
And Chair Terry?
Yes.
Okay, so that passes unanimously. And I think that actually brings us to the, yes, thank you.
Okay, so item 6 is for matters not posted on the agenda to discuss or to place on a future meeting agenda for action. Commissioners, do you have any announcements or items you would like placed on a future agenda? Commissioner Shipp?
Yeah, I believe it was February. Kim Epps promised us a Narcan policy. We still haven't like heard anything about that, especially with the Narcan motion that came up. And as you know, some youth just overdosed. So I'm hoping that we can get like an update on that Narcan policy, like and the changes that happened.
We can definitely talk about that at the agenda meeting, and there are some things to update since our last meeting that I've seen the stash of Narcan myself for distribution, and we got some information last week. So thank you for reminding me of that, and I'll make sure that we talk about that at the agenda planning meeting.
Just to follow up on Commissioner Shipp's request, does that also include like family notification and communication with defense counsel and things like that?
I know that I wanted to just bring up, and I think it may come up under staffing, but just wanted to share that commission staff has gone out to visit 2 field offices and has seen firsthand in both East LA and Lancaster the lack of staffing in those offices. You know, people not, you know, they're able to go there to see a person, but in terms of the service referrals they should be getting, in terms of really having adequate supervision, it is not there. And I think it was, you know, staff is impacted by that, and they really shared their concerns, including safety concerns when community members are harmed in the community. They're deeply, deeply upset about that. And I think it was really hard to hear that firsthand. And so we would really like to spend some time talking about that.
Can I speak? I think that's a great idea. One thing is that between what probation has reported to us recently about those staffing levels in the field and the ability to maintain those caseloads, there's been repeated sort of public comment about there being discrepancies between actual staffing in the field and what's reported to us. So I think we should do some investigation on the best way to get objective numbers on what those levels are out in the field for that as well.
All right. So that leads us to adjournment. So thank you all for joining us and sharing your comments. As a quick reminder, please be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel at LA County POC. To receive reminders about our upcoming meetings, visit our website at poc.lacounty.gov, and you can subscribe to our email listing. It is now 12:14. Can I have a motion to adjourn today's special meeting?
I move to approve.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jackson, seconded by Commissioner Harris. Commissioners, please unmute yourselves and vote with a voice vote.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously, and today's special meeting is adjourned. Thank you for joining us.